Hi, Shabbat Shalom. Happy Friday, and thank you for joining us on Living Waters, Falling Deeper in Love with God's Word. I'm one of your hosts, Lauren.
And I'm Stephanie Pavlantos. Thank you for joining us tonight.
I don't know if I'm looking at our stream and it looks like my Facebook page got...
Yeah, it's not coming up.
It's not. So it's telling me try creating a new stream or just remove this destination and then re-add it. Is that something I should give Mark a call, you think?
Yeah,
or email for that?
Yeah.
Okay. It's not playing
on your page.
So were you able to share it to what you needed to share?
I'll have to look for another way. So I will figure it out. Yeah.
All right. I will. I don't know how to fix that. I'll have to play with it or send Mark an email. So I just noticed that when it came up, like it gave me a message when I started playing everything. So, all right. And are you on the right side? On the correct side?
Yes.
Okay. Hi, welcome to Living Waters. We're done with all of our background. We're just having some technical challenges. So thank you for your patience and welcome back. We actually are making our way through the book of Romans. We are up to chapter 11. We dibbled our toes in just a little bit last week, but we're going to go ahead and get started. And it was interesting because in the book that we are using as the commentary that we're going through, the Torah class, he said that Romans 11 is his favorite book to teach about. Or his favorite chapter in Romans to teach about. So
it's a good chapter.
Yeah. And we try to read a little bit of ahead where we are going to be. And so Stephanie and I are both at right around chapter 15-ish. She's a little ahead of me, but he just, there's not one word in these chapters that he doesn't just dig into and bury under, every word is examined and oh my, yeah, it's a lot. All right. So chapter 11, verse 1 starts out, in that case, I say, isn't it that God has repudiated his people? Heaven forbid. For I myself, a son of Israel from the seed of Abraham in the tribe of Benjamin. So he is giving another question to the straw man, or the straw man is asking a question.
Right.
In that case, hasn't God rejected, or we looked up the word repudiated to get the right definition. It's rejected or even divorced. So, and Paul says, heaven forbid, which is a typical response. No, heaven forbid.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, it's and again in Hebrew style, he tells you, I'm a son of Israel from Abraham, from the tribe. So in other chapters or other books he writes, he actually gives like some of his genealogy because that's a very Hebraic thing.
Yeah. He mentions that. Where is it? In Philippians. A little further in the chapter, he brings up Philippians 3, verse 4, where he just goes down a bullet point list of
Pharisee among Pharisee. I mean,
I am a Jew of all Jews. So that's where we've gotten that from. Okay, well, he's using the term seed of Abraham, and he's again using that remez, that there's a base value definition, but then there's always, like a layer of information behind it. And I think remez is pretty typically the way that most of us would study the Bible, that we'll take it word for word, but then, a literal meaning, but then there's always some kind of, connotation or figurative language that plays a part.
Right. There's always a double meaning that you can.
Right. Okay. All right.
That seed of Abraham comes from the Old Testament. So he's quoting that from what wasn't an Old Testament to him, but
the Testament. Yeah.
But I did like it says, on one level, as to say, he is a spiritual seed of Abraham who is representative of the covenant promise of salvation. But on another level, he's making a point that he is flesh and blood Hebrew. He is not he did not convert into become a Gentile or a Christian. So
he sticks to that point, and he makes it a few times in these first few verses. Like, Paul did not convert to Christianity that we think of today. Paul remained a Jew. He didn't stop following Torah. He didn't stop following, the observations and, the practices of a Jewish life.
mm-hmm.
He very much still incorporated that. The only difference is he did believe that the law did not save you,
Mm-hmm.
and that Messiah was uh, the ultimate plan for God. So, yeah.
Yeah. And again, we said this last week, but just to repeat, we basically said if God broke his promises to the Jewish people, and he even writes this, he goes, if God would make what seems to be an ironclad, unconditional promise to the Hebrews over the ages,
Right.
one he repeats time after time, that he will never forsake his people, he will never abandon his heritage, Israel, and then he suddenly does,
Mm-hmm.
then why would Gentile Christians feel confident and secure that God would not find a reason to abandon us?
Right. Right.
Because we see, like, in the commentary, he gives just 3 examples. He gives 1 Samuel 12,
Mhm.
Psalm 94, and then Jeremiah 33.
Well, there's a little more to those promises too. He says because if God has indeed rejected his people, Israel, due to their unfaithfulness, then God has broken his promises to them. And then what she just mentioned, Samuel, Psalms, and Jeremiah, those are like restating the promises of God,
Right.
the promises of land and a people, land and, and you're my people. And that is something in this chapter he camps on. He really goes into, and I think it's important because it's so much of that in our world today that, we don't have to support Israel. It's not the original Israel of the Bible. Okay, well, the promise wasn't, those people are dead and gone, and they have been scattered throughout the world, but the promise was to a people group and a land. And he's saying it's a promise.
Yeah, exactly. Good. And he says in 1 Samuel 12:22, Adonai will not abandon his people.
Right.
He will not he will not abandon.
Will not
And
abandon.
I think even if you try to use the argument that, well, he, not everyone did, so he abandoned them all, because some did, some didn't, or the majority didn't. Well, we can say the same today about the Gentiles.
At the church, right? And just what Stephanie was saying, if you're saying that God abandoned them for a few Jews, or because so many Jews have rejected him, there's more Gentiles than Jews, and there's more Gentiles that have rejected him than Jews that have rejected him.
Yeah.
So you can't use that argument because it applies to us as well.
And Gentiles are the rest of the nations. It doesn't matter if they practice Islam, Christianity, it doesn't matter.
Yeah.
They're all Gentiles as far as biblical text.
Right.
So it doesn't matter. And when you look at communism, you look at Islam, they're all Gentiles.
Right.
And they've all rejected Yeshua. So.
And he makes a good point to that, and we'll get to it. And he calls it circular salvation, and it's a very good point. I think a lot of people don't even think about it, so we'll get there. Psalm 94:14, it says, "For Adonai will not depart his people, and he will not abandon his heritage." And then in Jeremiah 33, "Hence they despise my people. You'll no longer look at him as a nation. If I have not established my covenant with a day and a night, fixed laws in the sky, the earth, I'll also reject the descendants." It's basically, if the earth is still here, they're still my people.
Yeah.
Kind of very, very similar to what Jesus says about the law. Until the law, until the earth passes away, basically, to the end of times, the
not
law
one jot or tittle will disappear. So
right.
There's actually a time. So for us to abandon it before heaven and earth has passed away, we're a little jumping the gun. So so he just goes on to talk about the The entire book of Romans has Paul refuting a division of Jews from Christians and the division between Jewish believers and Gentiles believers.
Right.
And then he goes, in many cases, and I'm on 277, in many cases, Paul is not so much trying to give us new information. He is trying to get us to unlearn wrong assumptions and doctrines in order to relearn right doctrine.
Right.
So, and unlearning is much more difficult than learning it for the first time.
That's the truth. Oh boy, is that the truth. That's the truth.
So,
okay. I don't have a ton on 276 and 277 other than because he kind of talks about the same topic.
Yeah, I didn't have that. I have more on 278, but then, yeah. So, there's so many things that I've heard over the years, and I don't know. It's there's so much bad information out there. You really have to be discerning.
So this is kind of what he's kind of getting to. Many will readily explain, and this, I'm going to read a few lines. Many will readily explain that Jews killed Christ or that Jews rejected Jesus, so God reject them. This is usually followed by explaining that the reason the Old Testament is no longer relevant is because it concerns Israel, and Israel is God's people of the past. Mm-hmm. The New Testament elects the church, and thus God's new people of the present and future. The bottom line, Christians don't hate Israel, but Israel has lost its place in salvation history and are worthy of scorn and suspicion, and God has turned his special favor now to the Gentiles, the Christians in this era. Mm-hmm. So among some, Israel has also lost its right to the promised land. Right. And so he's, not every Christian and not every church believes that, but I think I don't know, maybe my algorithm is skewed, but if you just look at the people on social media or, demonstrations or things like that, a lot of people would say, yes, I'm a Christian or I believe in God, but, freedom for Palestine, or there's some kind of support for Palestine and, the colonizers and just different things like that. And, from the river to the sea. But then when you ask them what river and what sea, they don't even know, So, and that's all anti-Semitism, and that's all pushing Israel out of the promise.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And I mentioned last week,
I don't think you did mention. I think you told me about it, but I don't know that you mentioned it on the show about the history. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, there's a whole section, and we can get to it because he inserts Romans 11:11 here, and so right. I don't know if you want to talk about it now or talk about it when we actually get to Romans 11.
Doesn't matter. No. Okay, we can talk about both. It says, this is skipping ahead like 10 verses. Okay, in that case, so we're missing the part he's discussing. I say, isn't it that they have stumbled, and the result is that they've permanently fallen away? So it's another question. Haven't the Jews stumbled and they've permanently fallen away? Heaven forbid. Quite the contrary. It's by means of their stumbling that the deliverance has come to the Gentiles in order to provoke them to jealousy. Mm-hmm. And this is, we got to get there, but this is where we start understanding that cycle of salvation that we're talking about.
Because it's really important to understand that God's main purpose in not that he didn't love all the Gentile people mm-hmm. and doesn't still love them. He does. He wants us all to come to faith and understanding and knowledge of his son. But, I was even telling my husband this morning, we read back in another chapter that God himself told Moses back in the Torah that I will have pity on who I want to pity, and I will have mercy on who I want to have mercy. Mm-hmm. So, why does everybody not get healed, or why are there people with addictions who pray to have those addictions taken away? It's really God's choice. It is his choice, and it's not about favor, and it's not about what you've done. It's about choice. Mm-hmm. So he decided to bring in the Gentiles. So he himself decided that in order to do that, he was going to have to harden the hearts of the Jews.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what he did.
Mm-hmm.
So he used their hardened hearts and he allowed them to become more hardened.
Mm-hmm.
Just like we saw back in Exodus with the Pharaoh,
mm-hmm.
in order to accomplish what he wants.
Right.
And it's not him manipulating people. It's him doing what he needs to do to set other things in motion.
Mm-hmm.
So while he wants the Jews to become part of his family, he also wants the Gentiles. So in order to allow the Gentiles to experience his salvation, then he hardens their hearts. But then he wants us as believers, as Gentiles, to bring them to a jealousy, to bring them to a point where they're like, well, if God's blessing them, I want to be blessed through his son too, you know? Mm-hmm. So he goes on this kind of not really tangent, but he really explains that well.
Right. And he even admits, it's like, this sounds terrible. You know, if this is the God who would harden the hearts of somebody, that sounds bad. Mm-hmm. But he's continuing the argument that it's not a loss, but it's an opportunity to extend it to everyone and to use it to then ultimately turn the Jews' heart back. Because if they're provoked to jealousy, that means they want to be with God again, and then they're acceptable at that point.
Yeah. And you're right. I mean, he just says it's by means of the Jews stumbling that the Gentiles were delivered.
Right.
So, but then he'll go on to say, we may not get to that, but be careful, Gentiles, that you don't get boastful and get, you should be terrified, because if he can do it to them, he can do it to you.
Yeah.
So don't get a big head and think you're better than the Jews. And that's what happens.
Yeah. Jeff and I had a big conversation about this weekend, because I was reading it to him, and he's like, we haven't done that. You know, he's like, I've never even had a conversation with a Jewish person other than with me, you know, or something like that, mm-hmm. you know, at a Seder or Messianic Jew or something like that. Mm-hmm. And I said, I've met with a rabbi from Israel who his only job was to make contacts with the Christian church, to have an opportunity to just come in and introduce themselves and put a human face mm-hmm. to what's happening in Israel. And the pastors I reached out to they're not interested. You know, I'm like, how does that help you provoke anyone to jealousy?
Right. Exactly. And I remember I was doing some teaching in a certain denomination, mm-hmm. and we were there for a little while. But anyway, they didn't even want to hear. They didn't even want to hear about Passover. They didn't want to hear about anything. It's like, that's all Jewish stuff. I don't want to hear about it.
Well, I'm not going to name names and companies and all that, but I mean, even Stephanie has had writing projects squashed because she wanted to use the name Yeshua, or there were too many references, you know, to mm-hmm. Jewish culture, and the publisher is like, no, we don't want to publish that.
Yeah.
How do you provoke them to jealousy? This might be a little off topic, but there on one of the videos I had seen, TikTok videos, it was a person was speaking with he was obviously Jewish because he had the yarmulke. I'm assuming he's Jewish, but they were talking why a Jewish person will not go into a church. He's like, not all of them, some will, but for the most part, a Jewish person will not go into a church because it's they believe it's part idolatry. Of having the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit, the Trinity. They believe the Trinity is idolatry, right? And I believe in the divine aspects of Yeshua, and I do believe in the completeness of God's, mm-hmm. Godhead.
Yeah, Godhead.
But I don't pray to Yeshua, and Yeshua doesn't say to pray to me. I pray in his name. I pray in his name and as my advocate, mm-hmm. as we would a high priest. But I pray to the Father, mm-hmm.
and that's exactly how Yeshua told us to pray.
Yeah. He gave us an example, our Father who art in heaven. Yeah.
And I mean, it's funny because just something you said made me think of it. But, you know, my husband has a Jewish friend and he goes, well, I believe that we believe in the same God. It's just mine doesn't have a son.
Yeah.
And so, you know, that's how they see it. So
Mhm.
it's like once you enter Jesus into the situation, then that's when they stop listening. But
And I'm not discounting that, but I'm like, as Christians, we don't even think about these things and how they become a stumbling block for our Jewish friends.
yeah. And you really have to be careful. And I don't want to say be careful what you say, but start in the Old Testament. It is our job as believers in Yeshua to know his word.
Yeah.
And when we can't even quote Old Testament scriptures to a Jewish person, and that's what they know,
Yeah.
you know, and we don't even know it well enough to debate with them.
Yeah. Yeah.
You know, and so there's a guy, I have to think about his name, but he is part of Jews for Jesus. And he's got a great ministry. He is a Jewish, he's a Messianic Jew. He gives his testimony. He was on my podcast. He was excellent. And I watched some of his videos on YouTube. And he lives in Israel. He's from America, but he lives in Israel. And he goes up to Jewish people and he talks about the scriptures with them. And some don't know anything, others know plenty. And but he can hold his own. He can talk to them about the scriptures that they're reading.
Right.
And that's what we have to do.
Right.
We have to know it, but we get so caught up in just the New Testament that we don't pay any attention to the Old, and therefore, how are we ever going to show them, hey, I know your scriptures too.
Yes.
I know these scriptures that we call the Hebrew scriptures.
Yes.
And but we're lazy. We're unmotivated to do those kinds of things. But it's a shame. But when I know we'll pick some of this up later. We can go a long time on this, but
okay. 279. What you got? 278, 279.
He just had up there at the very top, it was by means of the Jews stumbling that the Gentiles were delivered. Ironically, however, the why for delivering the Gentiles was to provoke into Israel to jealousy so that they would be saved. So I think you kind of mentioned that, but that's what and then this is where you start talking about circular, the very next sentence. So it's in the middle of the first paragraph. So the entire endeavor is rather circular.
Yeah. Yeah.
So it's, I'll just finish reading it and then you can
go. Yeah, go for it.
It starts out as for Israel's benefit. And then when Israel shunned it, God used another people who would benefit, but also who would bring the benefit of a saving righteousness in Messiah right back to Israel and thus achieve God's goal of saving all Israel.
Israel, right. That's exactly right. Okay, what page are you on?
That was 279.
Okay. All right, I'm on the right page. Okay. Did you want to say anything about David Stern?
We can, if you want. Okay. We can go into that. So
doesn't matter. I didn't know if that was something that
I started reading it. His biggest issue, and maybe I'll just kind of summarize it. David Stern is a Messianic Jew,
right?
And he, there's a lot of books that he's written, including the complete Jewish study Bible. I think he had a hand in getting that written. But he basically makes the argument that the biggest problem with Gentile Christians is that we're not making them jealous, like we kind of laid out. So he's like, it's the great shame. Not only has the church not provoked the Jews to jealousy, but it has engendered repugnance and fear. So that when the Jewish people instead of being drawn to the love of their Jewish Messiah, they come to hate and ignore him, remaining convinced that their non-Messianic Judaism or secularism, whatever, is superior to
Gnosticism. It's more superior
to Christianity. So instead, we give them ammunition to hate Yeshua.
Yeah.
And so it's not just us today in this
Yeah,
century.
years.
Yeah,
Yeah.
they
And
go all the way back to.
he does. He bring, like the Gentiles in Spain,
Yeah,
the Crusades,
right.
he goes through just history, Nazi Germany, nobody stopped, the
Yeah,
devastation
no
of
one
many Jews.
protected them. There were
Nobody.
people, obviously, but
Yes,
they're not
yes,
enough.
yes. So
Um,
that's kind of what he's talking about. And
and then, of course,
also,
he brings up the Christians that support Palestine and the
right.
killing of Jewish people and children.
Yeah, so that was the other thing. It said, it happens in our own backyard. We're to pray for peace in Jerusalem, and we are to stand with Israel and its people because we're commanded to do so. There are and remain God. They are and they remain God's people, but we're not only to stand with them, but we're also to stand against those who support Israel's enemies, even if they sincerely believe they're doing the Christian thing when they do so. And this is what I meant by there's so many people that they support Israel's enemies, and
Yeah, or not showing the love of Yeshua to them.
no.
I mean, do the Palestinian people need Yeshua? Absolutely.
Yes, absolutely.
We pray for them,
Yes.
but not the way it happens. Yeah, not the way it's been happening.
Mm-hmm.
I did a podcast with a woman who's a Mora, so she's a basically a female rabbi, and she we in our podcast we named it Redressing Yeshua because in the West that's exactly what we've done. We've taken off all of his tzitzits and his prayer shawl, and we've dressed him up in as a very fine looking Western man.
Right.
And it's wrong. It's just like if you go back to Genesis when Joseph was taken into captivity into Egypt, and his brothers came after he had been there for so many years. They didn't recognize him. Why didn't they?
Because he was redressed.
Yeah.
Yeah, he looked like an Egyptian.
Yeah. And that's the same problem that it's still what we do. We dress him as a Western Christian, and he was a Jewish man, a Jewish rabbi.
He makes the same point about Paul. Yeah, I think it was right towards the end of the chapter, and he was saying, Paul has been a different haircut and a thin, angular face, and often, not a full, Middle Eastern beard, and no olive skin at all, and people will describe him as someone who's given up Judaism, or he was a Christian, as if he's walked away and created this whole new
religion.
Yeah, and that's absolutely 100% not the case. That is not the case.
Right. So it's a big deal. And I mean, I think it's worth spending this time on it because we have to understand Jesus is Jewish. Everyone who wrote the Bible was Jewish. Everyone who participated in keeping the Bible kept the Torah. I mean, and we think even Luke did. He actually, Luke is the only one of all the writers who actually did convert. But he converted to Judaism.
He did, exactly.
So nobody else converted.
It's important. It's so important to know that, and to know the Hebrew culture. And Stephanie stopped short of. It's a Jewish book. It's written primarily in Hebrew, Aramaic. Is there Greek in there? Yes. And Paul probably wrote some things in Greek. Our author even mentions, like, he's quoting from the Septuagint, which would have been the Greek Bible. And Paul, 100%, Paul was highly educated. So yes, he did. But when Jesus was on the cross and he said, my God, why have you forsaken me? He spoke that in Aramaic. He didn't say it in Hebrew. He didn't say it in Greek. Aramaic was his home language. That's his language. And so when we've disregarded that, I mean, my mom has shared, she's in Bible studies, and it's like blasphemy. People accept when mom says something like, the Bible is written in Hebrew. even the New Testament, it's like blasphemy,
Oh,
you
it
know.
is. Yeah.
And I'm like, can you not expand your mind so much to consider and do your own research, you know? Google is an amazing thing. You got to be careful what you find, but you can find some good stuff.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
look at original documents. Don't go to Wikipedia. Look at original documents and look at writings. And you know, it's go look up the Dead Sea Scrolls and find out what languages they were written in.
Yeah. And Nehemiah Gordon, it looks like Nehemiah, but he pronounces it Nehemiah.
Yeah.
Gordon is his last name, and he actually writes. He's a Jewish man. He's actually taken part in translating the Dead Sea Scrolls. He knows a great deal, but and he talks about, you know, the Greek Jesus versus the Hebrew Messiah, you know, or Hebrew rabbi. Or I think it just says Hebrew Yeshua. So he talks about the difference in how you know, Jewish Jesus was. So so I think that it's a shame, but we need to look things up. We need to do our own research. We need to read the Bible for ourselves.
Yeah.
So, and I know lots of people do, but it's not going through reading the Bible in a year. Don't try to read the Bible in a year. Try to take verses and study those verses. Study one book. Study one book for a year.
We've been studying Romans for 6 months.
Yeah.
Just one book.
Yeah. So, but you learn a great deal when you do
Oh my
that.
goodness, I can't even remember half the stuff I've learned.
That's why we write lots of notes and highlight. But yeah, so it's just, there's things that we love Scripture, and we want you to join us in studying Scripture.
Yeah.
So,
all right.
Learn it for yourself.
Romans 11, verse 2-6. We finally got through one.
I know, but it was worth it.
Hey, one verse. Okay. God has not repudiated his people, whom he chose in advance. Or don't you know what the Torah says about Elihu? Who is that? Elijah. I'm sorry. He pleads with God against Israel. Adonai, they have killed your prophets and torn down your altars, and I'm the only one left. And now they want to kill me too. This is Elijah talking. He's quoting Elijah. But when God's answer to him, I have kept for myself 7,000 men who have not knelt down to Baal. It's the same way in the present age. There is a remnant chosen by grace. Now, if it's by grace, it is according, not based on legalistic work. If it were otherwise, grace would no longer be grace. And again, Paul never says the law will save you. He always says it's up to God by his grace. Right. Always.
We take the words of Paul and then we kind of take them to an extreme that he never intended. Grace is an awesome, amazing thing. We don't deserve grace. We don't deserve
grace is mercy. In the Old Testament, right?
Yeah. But he gave grace and mercy to some of his own people in the Old Testament. He did it quite often, actually. So grace is not a bad word. Either is free gift is not a bad word. Mercy is not a bad word, but either is Torah. Torah is not a bad word. It's not Torah versus grace. It's Torah and grace.
Right.
So.
Right. Good job. Well, he was quoting Elijah, where Elijah had just, he was fleeing from Jezebel, who had threatened to kill him. And many of the prophets had been killed. And he's like, I'm the only one left. I'm the only one here. And he was quoting actually 1 Kings. So when I read through that, of course, I'm circling little things. Elijah traveled for 40 days. And so that number 40 is a number of rebirth and renewal and rededication, and something new will happen. And then also I will still spare 7,000. And so 710, any of those numbers.
That was good.
He put that in there too. It's a significant number. it's
Yeah, and
important.
7 times 10, any
Yeah.
10, like to 100 or 1,000, it still means it's the perfect number. It's
Yeah.
the
It's like
complete number.
super complete. Right.
Yeah, it magnifies its completeness when you
Mhm.
multiply by 10.
Mhm. Mhm.
So yeah, that was really cool.
Yeah. So it's not an exact quote from the passage of Kings, but it was close enough that we can see the link and we can see the
Yeah.
comparison to it. Okay.
Yeah, so that was good. And then he does go back to Romans 9, 30 and 31.
Mhm.
And he quotes that again. And then he also, before he goes into Hebrews or Romans 11, 7, but in Romans 9, 30 and 31,
Mhm.
he says, so what are we to say? This, that Gentiles, even though they were not striving for righteousness, have obtained righteousness, but it is a righteousness grounded in trusting.
Mhm.
However, Israel, even though they kept pursuing a Torah that offers righteousness, did not reach what Torah offers. Because here's the thing, Torah doesn't save us without Yeshua.
Right.
Yeshua is the one who saves us,
Mhm.
and he's the only one that saves us. But there are people who still are obeying Torah who in their own way that they are righteous because they're obeying Torah.
Mhm.
There is a righteousness that goes along with that, but it's not the righteousness of God.
Mhm.
It's the righteousness of growing in our understanding and obedience.
Mhm.
But without Yeshua, the Torah can't save. So we need him to save us, and then we complete this sanctification.
Mhm.
The being set apart in holiness and sanctification comes with obedience to
Right.
God through his instructions.
That's right. Okay, the next verse is a little hard. It's a little hard to listen to. Okay, what follows is that Israel has not attained the goal for which she is striving. The ones chosen have obtained it, but for the rest have been made stone-like. And so he went really into hardened hearts and that God does in fact harden even Jewish hearts, which is hard. That's a tough one. Why would God, they're his chosen people, why would he harden their hearts? But their hearts are being hardened so that Gentiles would have the opportunity to be saved. And then through our faith, we're to make them jealous, which would soften their hearts and reveal the necessity of a savior.
Yeah, and this is where he actually gets into free will versus predestination.
Yeah, it talks a little bit about that for a few pages.
Yeah, and he says,
And it's kind of like an if-then statement. It's
yeah,
kind of he's
there's free
like,
will and there's no predestination.
is there free will or is it predestination? And the answer is yes. Because it's kind of both.
Yeah, most of us put the two in opposition, but
Opposite
he's
camps.
saying
Yeah.
no, it's not. They're not in opposition. He says here on 284,
Mhm.
yet in the end, both are indispensable.
Yeah.
As both, like if we think of, do we need food or water? Do we need
Yeah.
food or oxygen? Well, you need them both.
Right.
So you can't live without either. So he says, as both food and air have definite impacts on life. In the end, the Bible shows us that the human experience is a joint venture between God's predestination and man's free will. It is not an either or proposition.
Mm-hmm.
So he said, if this concept bothers you, then good. Attention.
Yeah.
So we do not have to choose between predestination and free will. We just have to be aware of the existence of both, and that we have control over one, but not the other.
Right. Right. So I guess some examples would be God obviously hardened Pharaoh's heart, right? God has obviously hardened some of the Jews and they've rejected him. Like there are obviously people in the Bible who've rejected him. I'm even thinking of Korah, Korah, and I don't know that God hardened. I don't know that God hardened his heart, but he used, their selfishness and their choices
Right.
to further his, what he
Yeah, and
wanted.
he allowed those things to manifest,
Yes.
and he didn't. And it's the same with, I mean, again, going back to the whole addiction thing, I mean, I have a family member who the Lord just took away. Like the moment she was healed from her addiction, it was gone. She never backslid. She never, fell off the wagon.
Yeah.
Never. It was gone.
Mm-hmm.
Now, why doesn't God do that for everyone?
Everybody, who knows? Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, he doesn't. He doesn't do it for everyone. And it's not that she was more special,
Mm-hmm.
but then there's other things that she still struggles with because he didn't just wipe everything clean. Mm-hmm. So there's other areas in her life that she struggles. And
right.
So, but we're all in that kind of boat. Some of our addictions aren't bad. Some of our addictions, we can choose what to put into our body. And if we eat McDonald's every day of the week, it's not good for us, and we might die an early death, but God's not going to stop that.
Yeah.
This is what your free will was, to eat whatever you want.
Yeah.
But he knows that, and then he knows exactly how long your life's going to go on. Mm-hmm. So is that predestination or, free will, so you can be an alcoholic, you can be addicted to drugs, mm-hmm. even painkillers. And, so I don't know. I mean, it's part of it's our free will to do so. And mm-hmm. part of it, because God knows the future, he knows it's already written in stone when you're going to die from something like that, So does that make sense at all?
It does. I mean, I was even thinking, I'll take it off of an addiction, even diabetes, not everybody who's overweight and out of shape and eats unhealthy has diabetes. Right. And a lot of people do. We don't have, we have free will in how we take care of ourselves, but mm-hmm. ultimately it's predestined who's going to be predisposed to it or not.
Yeah. And some people have their cancer totally free. And I know that I even had somebody say to me, well, I don't believe that God heals because he doesn't heal everybody.
Wow.
So God doesn't heal if he doesn't heal everybody. No, right. It's still his own will. He will have pity on whom he wants to have pity.
Yeah.
And he will have mercy on whom he wants to have mercy. I forget the rest of that verse, but
yeah.
But it's his will. It's he predestined it that this person was going to be healed for whatever reason. Mm-hmm. Maybe some ailments, some diseases keep us clinging to God, mm-hmm. where a healing might have somebody actually turn to God.
Right. And we don't know, it could be somebody we don't even know who's watching us in the background.
Yeah.
And I don't want to use that as a pat answer, we just don't know, but it's not
up to us.
It's not up to us. Mm-mm. And being good and trying, yes, I know a lot of people are like, you have the favor of God. No, it's, thank you for thinking that. But no, it's not. It's not because I've done anything special that he likes me more or anything like that. So
and we think that because, when I couldn't get pregnant for the first 4 years I'm like, God, what have I done wrong to deserve this?
Yeah.
And you kind of it's not fair. And then the first time I get pregnant, I have a miscarriage. It's like, this isn't fair. It's not fair. Why can these people who aren't even married or, whatever, mm-hmm. Using drugs and they get pregnant, what is the sense in that,
Yeah.
So it is hard to understand. It's very hard to understand, but mm-hmm. in the end, we're still responsible for our own free will and what we do with what God's given us.
Mm-hmm. I agree. Okay. Anything else on 284, 285? We are about, 10, 15 minutes or so in. Yeah.
It says Christians even owe the Jews who refused to accept Messiah a debt of gratitude. It is because of their being hardened that God turned to the Gentiles in the first place. So,
what if Christians actually had that, gosh, I really owe you something attitude, what a conversation that could begin,
Yeah.
And we really mess things up sometimes.
We do.
Okay,
We're all guilty.
Romans 11:8. Just as the Tanakh says, so this is Paul is continuing the stream thought. It's going for a couple of verses, and so this is a whole quote of Isaiah, and he says, "God has given them a spirit of dullness, eyes that do not see, ears that do not hear." Right down to the present day, and this is a continuation of God's once chosen have obtained it, but the rest of them He's made stone-like. He's made stone-like by giving him a spirit of dullness, eyes that don't see, ears that don't hear. So,
and it's interesting because that one verse, Romans 11:8, is actually has three parts to it. One is found in the prophets, one part of it's found in the Torah, and the other's found in the writings, which is all makes up the Tanakh.
Right. I think
so he actually didn't quote one verse. He's quoting three.
Right. He's quoting the prophets is Isaiah 29:10, and then he's quoting Deuteronomy 29:4, and then he's quoting Psalms 29:22. I mean, like each individual little line. Yeah, 29. I'm sorry, 69:22 through 23. So, and he puts it in here. I mean, it's a lot. It's a lot. So this is something I thought, I'm going to go off track a little bit. When he gave us the Isaiah passage, okay, he's talking Isaiah 29:11. He gets down to the bottom and it says, "For Adonai has poured out a spirit of lethargy. He has closed your eyes." This is where it's a quote. "He's closed your eyes, and that is the prophets, and he's covered your heads, that is the seers. For you, this whole prophetic vision has become like a message that it's sealed up." Listen to this, and what does this sound like to you? Sealed up like a scroll, and when one gives it to someone who can read it and says, "Please read this," and he answers, "I can't because it's sealed." What does that sound like?
Well,
what book in the Bible does that
Revelation.
Sound? Yes.
Yeah. Okay, that's where I thought you were going. I'm like, that's what it reminds me of.
I hope I guess right. Yeah. To me, that's right out of Revelation, or Revelation has pulled that right out of Isaiah.
Well, and even in the beginning when he says, "You're drunk, but not from wine."
Yeah, the Babylon. Yeah. There's a lot of key points there that are definitely overlapping.
Yeah, I thought and this again is Isaiah 29, and he's like, "If you make yourself stupid, you will stay stupid." And it's kind of like your mom telling you, "Don't cross your eyes, so stay that way."
Yeah. Or if you make that face, your face is
going to freeze that way.
Yeah.
So anyway,
if you blind yourself, you're going to stay blind. And I think that's so like, okay, when Paul quotes this stuff, we have to pull the whole context. That's the whole point of him bringing, I mean, he printed out the whole 11 verses. Yeah. And it's important. So I think that's very important compared to what we're talking about of, you know, Christians are to make Jews jealous, but if we're going to act stupid, you're going to be stupid, you know, or if you're going to be blind, you're going to be blind.
And he's talking to the Jewish people. It's like, if you blind yourself, you're going to stay blind. You know, you're not going to see. And it's the same way. But it's the same way today.
It is.
Because we believe everything that the pastors say. And we actually know a woman, she just quotes everything her pastor says. It's like you read the Bible yourself, but she quotes everything her pastor says. And then, but she's blind to truth when it's given right to her. She's blind to it. So we do the same thing today. We blind ourselves because we've trained ourselves not to read the Bible for ourselves and actually listen to the Holy Spirit. We listen. Our ears are trained on what our pastor says and how our pastor explains it, even if he's wrong.
Even if he's wrong. Sad.
Yeah.
Sad. And just because you're like I'm a graduate of seminary, but even if your pastor's gone to seminary, they're just repeating the cycle. They're just teaching you the same thing we've learned. Like we don't study, you know, anything new. It's all been like this is what we believed in our denomination. And here's the sad thing. Every denomination's got different ideas on original sin, on predestination, on, you know, like, so it just depends on what denomination you talk to is what their argument's going to be. So, and we're not even consistent in that.
I know.
Yeah.
So we need to ask for the Holy Spirit to guide us. We need to have him guide us.
Yep.
And tell us what his word means, because he's the one who truly knows.
Yep. I agree.
You know?
I agree.
So
and even, I mean, even ask, let me see the connections. You know,
Yeah.
I don't want, I mean, a big prayer I have is, God, I don't want to just people, pastors or anybody just telling me what, like, oh, I found this connection, go look, and like, oh, look at this great connection. I want to see the connections.
Yes.
I want to be the one that teaches the connections. I want to reveal,
Yeah.
I want to show me the pearls,
Yeah, and I want revelation. Show me revelation.
I want the revelation. Yeah, I don't want it just to be dependent on somebody else teaching me or a book. I love these books, but I hope that I've come to a point that I'm learning enough that, now I'm seeing a connection.
Right.
Like reading Isaiah and we're hearing these words, and I'm like, boy, that really sounds like the book of Revelation. Those are very similar themes,
I remember teaching on the Israelites crossing the Jordan. And I happened to think then I was comparing when Jesus got baptized in the Jordan, and there were words that were the same back in Joshua and in John. And I thought to myself, I wonder if Jesus was baptized in the same place that they crossed.
Ooh, wouldn't that be cool?
And they were. It is the same because
really?
they both give like by Shechem. They crossed near Shechem, and Jesus, he was baptized.
So it gives
near
the
Shechem.
Geographic location.
Yeah,
So
they both gave geographic. And so then I start researching it because the Lord just like put that in my mind. He put that connection there. And what's the significance of it, And so then I start doing research, and I'm like, oh, it is out there. There are people who made that connection already. So even though I wasn't the original, obviously, I was. It made me feel better. Like I wasn't just trying to make a connection that wasn't there.
I'm not making things up. Right.
Yeah. So there was proof for it. And, but it's really cool because when you think of it, Jesus was baptized. It's sort of a mikvah. And the same with the people who came into the promised land went through a mikvah. It stood up. The waters were gathered for them. So they could pass over, and through basically we're baptized in the name of Jesus because he's the one we follow, and to have that happening right there, all that happening at the same place, a few thousand years apart is kind of a cool connection.
Yeah, it is. It's very cool, and I'm sure. I mean, Jews know their history. Jews know their geography. Jews know the word. And so I'm sure somebody in the audience was like, hey, didn't we cross here? And hey, this sounds familiar.
Yeah, exactly. You're right.
All right. We only have about 4 minutes. And so we're up to Romans 11, 9 through 10. And David says this. So this is the continuation of the quote. Let their dining table become for them a snare and a trap, a pitfall and a punishment. Let their eyes be darkened so that they can see with their backs bent continuously. So he's talking about God has given them a spirit of delusion and they can't see. So let their dining table become a snare and a pitfall, and let them be. So as a result of their blindness and
and it's significant to David because someone tried to poison him at his dinner table.
Yeah.
So that is why that's in his head. He mentions the dining table because it's the attempt to assassinate him by poisoning his food happened at a dining table.
Right.
And then the mention of their eyes being darkened means that David hopes that his enemies can't discern.
Right.
And the back bent continually means that his enemies might become slaves under forced labor.
Yeah.
So
and the reference to the eyes is always perception and understanding. So, he's bringing in, like, if your heart's going to be hardened and you're going to, your ears aren't going to hear, then you're going to be enslaved, basically. Yeah.
And then I just have, but now, just at the top of 288, verse 11 is not God taking action. Rather, it is that the people have themselves fallen away. So this is their free will. Fallen away from God's mercy as a natural consequence of refusing to accept their Messiah. So that's where their free will comes in. In both cases, Paul gives this typical rabbinic answer. Heaven
Heaven
forbid.
forbid. Right. Because Paul doesn't want them. He wants them to be awake and listen and soften your hearts. And he does not want, he's not wishing this on them.
Yeah. So he's saying to his strong man that there's no circumstance that you can think of whereby God's chosen people are rejected and abandoned, even if by all human standards they deserve to be.
Yeah.
And since mostly this is because God elected them long before they were ever a people. That's significant. Before he ever made them a nation or a country, they were chosen.
Yeah.
So,
well, and he goes back and he gives the promise in Genesis 12. I don't know if you want to read that. We have about a minute.
Yeah, if you want to read it, just reread 11 and 12, that's fine.
Okay, it says, in this case, I say, isn't it that they have stumbled, and the result they have permanently fallen away? Heaven forbid. Quite the contrary, it's by means of their stumbling that the deliverance has come to the Gentiles in order to provoke them to jealousy. We've read this part. Okay, moreover, if their stumbling is bringing riches to the world, that is, Israel being placed temporarily in a condition less favored than that of the Gentiles, is bringing riches to the latter, to Israel. How much greater riches will Israel in its fullness bring them? So again, that full circle, the jealousy is to save them.
Yeah.
So, and the loss of favor, if you will, or the allowing the divorce and the breaking of the covenant is only so that it can be renewed.
Yes.
Yeah.
So they can learn again, unlearn what they thought they knew and relearn what they didn't know.
Yes.
Or learn.
Exactly.
So yeah, we'll stop there.
Okay. I will put a note there and we will pick up. We're about halfway done with
we'll unpack 11 and 12 and hopefully the rest of the chapter.
Yeah, hopefully. We're doing about two weeks per chapter. It's taken us 8 months to get through Revelation. But thank you for joining us. Have a great evening. Get some rest tonight and enjoy your Sabbath. And
Shabbat Shalom.
Shabbat Shalom. If you missed today's show and want to watch it again or want to tell someone where they can watch this episode, go to lambnetwork.tv, where you will find this show and all of the other live Lamb show archives on the on-demand section of the website. Thank you for watching, and don't forget to tell someone about the Messianic Lamb Network.
We are richly blessed to bring you what we believe is the fullest, most diverse, yet up-to-date progressive teachings, discussions, and prayer programming you can find anywhere on this planet. Be sure to take the tour of the lambnetwork.tv website. I'm Stephanie Pavlantos, thanking you for joining us on the Messianic Lamb Video Network.